It's no secret that AI's ambitions and promises are sky high. And perhaps the biggest wheeler and dealer in the space is Sam Altman and his OpenAI. Altman's saying that OpenAI is on track for $20 billion in AI-related revenue this year. That's ahead of its own internal goal of $13 billion. They've got a massive goal of $100 billion or more in sales in just 5 years. But here's the reality. Some on Wall Street are wondering if the math really doesn't compute. Adding to some of the concerns, CFO Sarah Friar floating the idea of a kind of backstop from the federal government for the nation's AI build-out, those in comments on Wednesday, I think, to the Wall Street Journal. That was an idea which apparently made White House AI czar David Sachs quite unhappy. And OpenAI now suddenly on the defensive. And a tech heavyweight is weighing in, noted tech investor Brad Gerstner offering his take on OpenAI's revenue goals this morning. Listen.
I've watched the world's great entrepreneurs, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, get frustrated by investors asking those questions. I kind of look at it, I like somebody who's feisty and says we're going to blow those numbers away, but at the end of the day, they have to deliver.
We obviously should note that Gerstner's firm, Altimeter Capital, is an investor in OpenAI. So here now with more on OpenAI's sort of semi-damage control campaign is our own Mackenzie Segalos. And Mackenzie, I do want to note to our audience that Sarah Friar, who is the CFO of OpenAI, was scheduled to speak with Sarah Eisen today at that same conference in California. We promoted the interview yesterday, but last night, Friar, we don't know why, backed out. Again, don't know why, but kind of a shame Sarah didn't get to ask Sarah Friar to go into more detail. So what do we know as of OpenAI and some of these promises right now?
We know that Sarah Friar's comments to the Wall Street Journal really struck a nerve with Wall Street, tapping into that AI bubble anxiety. You've got Gil Luria at D.A. Davidson really pointing to this larger narrative that people have been talking about, whether OpenAI is at this center of a web that could be a single point of failure. And Brian, I got the stock chart up for Oracle. It's trading at around $235 right now. That's down below where it was before it announced that OpenAI deal. It's a huge run up. Its biggest price run since 1992. It's still come back down. And that's Gil Luria's point here, that names like Oracle and Broadcom, these guys are placing orders to fulfill the huge compute contracts that OpenAI has signed with them. And then there is now this concern, newly, resurged this week off the back of those Friar comments, of whether or not OpenAI can pay to fulfill all these contracts.
Yeah, this is very critical to understand. And I know for our audience that doesn't do this for a living, it might start to get a little bit convoluted. Heck, it's probably convoluted for those of us, me, who do this for a living. But I want to give kind of an analogy of what's happening here. And Mackenzie, tell me if I'm right or wrong. Let's say I agree to pay you next year a fixed amount of money. I don't pay you, but I say I'm going to pay you. You rely on my promise, and you go out and you buy a lot of things based on that money. Now you're on the hook to me. You better hope that I do what I say and pay you the money. Is that kind of where we are? OpenAI is making a lot of promises. Companies are relying on it, but they better hope that OpenAI comes through with the cash.
That's exactly right. And it's not just names like Oracle and Broadcom. You've also got the biggest hyperscalers who are tied up in that OpenAI trade. Microsoft, who also a big investor in OpenAI to the tune of $13 billion, they just signed a $250 billion cloud compute deal with OpenAI. Amazon Web Services, a $38 billion deal with OpenAI. And it's not like these hyperscalers have that amount of spare compute lying around. They're going to have to build to match that demand, which is why you saw those revised CapEx numbers when they all reported last week.
But it's not clear. We don't know, because OpenAI is private, if any, some, all, none, whatever of that money has actually been wired to those companies, right?
Well, a lot of these deals, and NVIDIA is a part of this as well. They signed a $100 billion deal with OpenAI, but these deals are structured in a way that we haven't seen before, essentially swapping equity for chips. So in the case of NVIDIA, they're investing into OpenAI, so they get an equity stake. And so they're giving OpenAI cash, which ostensibly goes into a big pool of money that they can then use to pay NVIDIA for the chips they're buying. But with AMD is handing OpenAI equity, 10% equity in their company virtually for free, again, for chips in return. So there's a question of you're giving some to get some. And that's the concern here of, kind of swapping money between the same players. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of upside in the markets.